Welcome to this month's Art Talk. Every month, Julie Schumer and I talk about art business and related topics. And this month, we were chatting about when are you ready to start showing your work? Like how do you know you're ready? What do you have to go through to start showing your artwork and selling your artwork? And there's no barometer, there's no rule out there that says you have to do X, Y, and Z before you're ready to show your work. It's more of, I think, an individual decision.
I would agree with that. I mean, we can all say the conventional wisdom, oh, you have to have 20 to 25, consistent paintings that are high quality and a body of work before you would start, say, approaching galleries, which would be one way of showing your work.
Hmm.
So that would be the conventional type wisdom. I mean, you can certainly start maybe trying to enter some juried shows ahead of that to see what the reaction to that work is and what, people are feeling about it. And if you get into it, some shows, maybe you might think you're on the right track. Although not getting into those shows is not a measure of anything other than other people were picked and not you for reasons unknown.
Right.
Um, I think that speaking for myself, I think that I've seen a lot of people try and show their work a little too soon. It's not developed sufficiently.
Hmm.
They don't really have a consistent voice. They're all over the board. And
Yeah.
another issue with trying to get into a gallery too soon, and I personally am guilty of this, is that it's possible that you might get sort of narrowed into a genre that you will be doing because a gallery can sell it. And maybe that isn't really your heart's desire ultimately. And then you say, well, what do I do? I can sell these things. And, I really want to do X, but I'm doing Y. And how do you get out of that conundrum? I
Hmm.
was lucky in that my gallery owners retired mercifully at a certain point in time. So I was off the hook for doing that work. And I was able to finally devote myself to something that really, at that point resonated with me. And I think also, let's face it, a lot of us get into this when we're a little older. We're not like 20 years old or 30 years old or even 40 necessarily. And there's a sensation of the press of time and wanting to short circuit this journey, a little bit. Well, it's true. I have
Yeah.
people tell me that all the time, and I would say that it's not going to work. You can't do that. I mean, what do you think, Kat?
Well, I agree with everything that you've said. So what can happen is you you might just have something that resonates with an audience and then you start selling it, and that thrill of selling might keep you going down that path for a while. However, depending on how long you plan to do this, you will wake up one day if it's really not authentically you, or you haven't spent the time developing the work, and it might be a year later, it might be 5 years later, and that's all that the audience wants. And then when you try to really develop the work and improve it and make it more authentically you, the audience isn't interested. It's a harder sell because they're used to what you stuck out there in the first place. And
Right.
also, you're kind of, I mean, certainly artists change their styles and add series and change their work along the way. But it's not without considerable, I think, time put in to develop a new series or a new body of work. It's not done just willy-nilly. So I mean, Malcolm Gladwell has this, 10,000 hours thing where in one of his books, it's a it's a measurement that he throws out that you have to do something 10,000 hours to really have mastered it. Other people have kind of disproven that is not a real rule. However, I do think there's something to that. Like really putting in the work to develop your style, and you want to have a recognizable style. You want to be kind of known for something, or someone should be able to see your work scrolling through social media or walking by a gallery and say, oh, that's so and so. You want your style to be that developed. So if you haven't put in the work to do that, then, I think things will be more difficult, I would suppose. And getting out there too early kind of does that.
It does. It does. And one thing I want to add is that, just looking at you and our work over the last, say, 5 or 6 years,
Mhm.
it's morphed. Both of us have morphed into into different things. Not
Mhm.
radical necessarily,
Mhm.
but there has been shifts in the work. We're not saying you can't have shifts in your work and maybe have multiple series of your work,
Mhm.
but trying to throw it out there too fast is going to, I think, stunt your full development.
Well, it can.
Can.
I mean, I don't know. I keep going back and forth now in my mind, because there's such a thrill when you sell that first piece.
Absolutely.
When you sell your artwork, it's like, the angels are singing and you
There's
know,
nothing like it.
yeah,
Okay.
it is super exciting that somebody wants something that you made with your hands and your brain and your creativity. It's a big high. So I think that's the trap is that you want to get out there, you want to sell your work quickly, but I mean, I don't know. I've done this 28 years and I don't think that would have worked for me. I don't think I'd still be in the game now
Uh-huh.
if I had started too early. I mean, I was painting, um, I don't know, 15, 20 years before I put my work out. And not that my first work that I put out was good, but it wasn't like the first painting I ever did.
Right.
I had been painting and drawing and sculpting and doing things for a long time before, I was in a different career and then I decided to switch gears. So it wasn't you know, it wasn't without the time, I guess, put in, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, right. Well, I could say so. The first work I really put out there in any kind of quantity were my figure pieces.
Hmm.
And I wound up doing them for like, probably over 15 years. And I only was working at my abstracts kind of on the side of that to
Hmm.
the extent that I had time possible, because I was still working like 2/3 time at
Yeah,
my other
at a,
career,
at a day job. Yeah.
at my day job. And I would say that it took me probably that long, 10 or 15 years of working those abstracts before they really started to, sell. They were good enough that people wanted them. So
Hmm.
it was, again, a situation of putting in that close to the same amount of time as you
Hmm.
on that series for me to get that going. They
Yeah.
just didn't have it before that. They lacked some quality,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever that quality was.
Right. So I guess what we're trying to say is, there are pros and cons to knowing, when are you ready? Are you ready right at the get-go, right out of the gate? Should you start, selling and showing your work right away, even if you've done only like 10 paintings or whatever it is? Or should you take a little bit more time to experiment and play and develop your visual voice, so that you have a consistency and that you've developed skills so that the work is finessed. It's very competitive. As everybody on social media knows, the art world is very competitive. I'm sure you've seen a zillion fantastic painters. If you're a painter or if you're a sculptor, you've seen a zillion fantastic sculptors. So it's not a small pool. You want to be at your best, I think, is what I would say.
Definitely.